It's actually really wonderful to be here, and it is quite fitting that I'm speaking to you this morning from exactly that kind of rural place that will be at the focus of our conversations during those 2 days. I'm in the beautiful village of Alpbach, which is a village deep in the Tyrolean Alps, facing exactly the challenges that you outlined. How does a village, and I look outside the window and there's cows in front of my balcony, how does a village that, traditionally has lived off agriculture and is now living off tourism, how does it balance out the needs of its population, the needs of those that come to visit, and how can it stay part of a bigger globalized world? And how can it play not only its part, but be a co-creator, an active co-creator in the new world that we're trying to build? My name, as Federico said, is Marie Ringler. I lead our work at Ashoka across Europe. And one of the things that I've learned over the last very challenging months, I think challenging for all of us, is that location and geography play a huge role. That the question of where we're based, how we live, who we are supported by, becomes even more critical and an essential force to our well-being in times of crisis. And so I don't think there could be a better moment for this conversation around how do we want to shape Europe? How do we want to shape a world where we use location and leverage locations and use geography in a way that, pulls out the strengths and makes sure that everyone can contribute. Many of you, I'm sure, already know Ashoka. We are the world's largest network for and with and the support of social entrepreneurs. We're active in 90 countries of the world. I have the great privilege and pleasure to be working with a team across 25 countries in Europe. We are currently working with around 700 social entrepreneurs and hundreds of young change makers, partners, and change makers in general, people that understand that there is a huge power and beauty in all of us coming together to co-create our world and make it a more just, a world where, everyone can step into their own power. Federico already said, 29% of our European populations live in rural communities. And most of those communities have very low access to critical infrastructures, such as education, transportation, mobility, elements of our welfare systems where they exist, but also things like an internet connection. We, in our work, have learned that as an organization that's focused on, identifying and supporting social entrepreneurs and change makers, innovation and the best ideas very often come from what we call the periphery. And what do we mean by periphery? Periphery is not only a term that applies to geography and location. It is a term that applies to centers of power. Where are those that have access to power, that are able to influence? And what we're seeing is that very often in the work of our social entrepreneurs across the world, but also in Europe, the best ideas don't come from the usual suspects. They come from people who truly feel passionate about changing a problem, about addressing something that is key to all of us, to the well-being and welfare of all of us. And why is periphery, and why is a viewpoint of periphery, which could also be connected to somebody's background? Where do I come from? What's my standpoint? What are the experiences that I've had in my life? That not being part of a mainstream culture often gives us incredibly powerful insights, not only into problems, but also into the solutions. And I think what you will experience over this 2 days is the power of those solutions, is the power of these, innovations and the innovators behind it that think out of the box, that really look at how to strengthen strengths, how to identify untapped resources, how to change rules, how to change roles. And what do we mean by that? Ashoka's perspective is always driven by the wish to not only address a symptom, but actually change the system. And you're probably all familiar with this, saying that a social entrepreneur is not someone who, gives the hungry person a fish or even teaches them to fish necessarily, but that they're the ones who change the fishing industry. So systems change is really about understanding what are the factors in this system that typically is extremely complex and interconnected. What are the levers in that system that need to move in order to affect changes in people's mindsets, in changes in people's behavior, in the way we think about opportunities, for example. So systems change is at the core of everything that we do when we support social entrepreneurs. And that's what we are looking for, is to build alliances with like-minded systems changing entrepreneurs, whether they are entrepreneurs in their own right or intrapreneurs, so people who drive change within an organization. And it's these forces, these forces that very often, are driven and fueled by an unlikely perspective, by unlikely actors, by people with a very diverse background, by people who come from different locations, geographies, and viewpoints, that really drive, the change that is so important, not only for decentralized and rural communities, but for all of us across Europe. So these 2 days really are an invitation to all of you to become part of this larger movement that is driven by so many different wonderful, diverse actors and comes from so many different perspectives. We're hoping to create a movement of people that understand that if all of us step into our own power, if we not only give ourselves permission to be change makers, but also if we invite others to become these change makers, then, we actually can be very optimistic about the future, because I think all of us have seen and experienced this before. When we come together around a common issue, a common concern, a common cause, and really truly work towards that goal, then, magic can happen. So many wonderful things can happen. So I wish all of us a magical 2 days, fueled by all these wonderful different perspectives in the room. And I hope that despite the fact that this is a virtual encounter, it also becomes a transformative encounter for all of us. Thank you very much for having me.